For nearly a century, Disney princesses have shaped the imaginations of young audiences around the world. Yet in modern times, many of these iconic characters have received backlash for what some critics would call passive, outdated, and even anti-feminist traits or storylines. The Disney princesses, once admired for the positive influence they had over young girls' childhoods, are now painted as a cautionary tale for what not to be. Their stories, rewritten to make them more like what many believe modern-day women should be, all while erasing the very qualities and traits that made these princesses so iconic and beloved in the first place. But this critique that the OG Disney princesses were passive victims waiting to be saved by a prince misses something important. It overlooks the strength these characters displayed, not in physical battles or flashy rebellion, but in quieter, subtler ways. The truth is, many of the early Disney princesses were powerful for their time and much stronger than modern audiences give them credit for. This is a defense of the Disney princess. But before we get into it, my name is Elle Lane and this is Fairytale Cocktails, where we discuss our favorite fairy tales and sip on our favorite fairy tale themed beverage. In honor of today's theme, I am sipping on the Glass Slipper Spritz, inspired by my favorite Disney princess, Cinderella. The Glass Slipper Spritz contains 1.5 ounces of gin, 1 ounce elderflower liqueur, 1/2 ounce lemon juice, club soda, and of course, some pixie dust or edible glitter. You can find this recipe and more cocktail recipes in the Disney Princess Cocktails recipe book available on Amazon, or check out the Fairytale Cocktails blog for cocktail recipes, themed party tips, and more. Links are below in the description. But jumping back into it, let's start by discussing the controversy around Disney's most iconic princess, Snow White. Snow White, the very first Disney princess, made her debut in 1937. In modern times, Snow White is labeled as weak, naive, and subservient. She's seen as a frightened little girl who was too trusting and only knew how to cook and clean for the men in her life. But here's the thing, Snow White was a frightened little girl who had been sheltered her entire life behind a castle wall. She was only a teenager when she was exiled from her home, nearly murdered, and left entirely alone in a dark, unfamiliar forest. I don't know about you, but I think I would be pretty freaked out in that situation, even as a grown woman. And yet, Snow White survives. What we see next is not a helpless girl, but a young woman who adapts, builds community, and brings warmth to a strange new environment. Her decision to cook and clean for the dwarves isn't submission, it's gratitude for the people who have taken her in during her time of need. In turn, she gets absolutely nothing but adoration from the 7 dwarves. Furthermore, the relationship we see between Snow White and the dwarves is not submissive, but maternal. While Snow White may have been young and naive, because, well, she actually was very young and naive, she was not a doormat. She was a kind-hearted young woman who made the best out of a scary situation. And even though the prince is often remembered as her savior, it's worth noting that her love story was not the main plot of the story. The prince appears only briefly at the beginning of the movie and again at the end. He also did not avenge Snow White by going after the evil queen. The dwarves did. They were the real heroes of this fairy tale. The true heart of Snow White is about the friendship she builds with a dwarf and her ability to survive and stay kind through it all. Though her strength is not loud, it's unmistakable. Cinderella's tale is often reduced to a narrative of rescue, a girl oppressed by her stepfamily and saved by a prince. But this reading erases her resilience. Cinderella is a survivor of loss and abuse. Her father dies and she is forced into servitude by those who should have cared for her. And yet, she does not become cruel. She does not give in to bitterness. Instead, she holds on to kindness, grace, and most of all, hope. Her wish to attend the royal ball is not about finding a prince, it's about freedom. One night of beauty, one night where she can be herself. And when her chance arrives, she takes it. The fairy godmother does not save Cinderella, she simply opens a door. Cinderella walks right through it. When the clock strikes midnight and everything is stripped away again, Cinderella returns to her reality and still doesn't break. That's not weakness, that's strength in its most graceful form. While critics would say that Cinderella should have done more to change her situation before she met the prince, I think that's unfair. It's unfair to ask a young girl to venture out on her own, away from the only family she's ever known with no means to support herself. It's unfair to place blame on a victim of abuse, especially in a time period where there were not many options for women on their own. Finally, marrying the prince does not define who Cinderella is. It is her kindness and beauty, even in the face of abuse and neglect, that displays her true character. It is these exact traits that wins the prince over, but the prince was never the main character in the story. It was always about Cinderella, a girl who survived difficult circumstances but came out on top because she never lost hope or gave in to bitterness. Marrying the prince was just a bonus. When Belle arrived in 1991, she was immediately praised for her independence and love of books. But her story offers more than a celebration of intellect. Belle is fiercely principled. She refuses to marry the town's most eligible bachelor, not because she's rebellious for rebellion's sake, but because she values character over charm. She wants something deeper, something real. When her father is in danger, she does not hesitate. She takes his place, entering a castle ruled by a terrifying creature. Now, let's just take a moment to think about how brave this actually is. Not only does she go off on her own to search for her missing father, but upon finding that he has been captured by a beast, she offers herself up in place of her father, not knowing what this terrifying beast is capable of or what her future holds as his captive. Belle exemplifies feminine strength that is often overlooked because it doesn't involve brandishing a sword or throwing a punch. No. Belle did not save her father from the beast by driving a stake through his heart, but Belle was not a 200-pound warrior seasoned in battle. She was a young country girl who had never been beyond the border of her provincial town. Had she attempted to corner the beast using her strength and brawn, well, she most likely wouldn't have gotten far. So instead, she saved her father by doing the one thing she could, by sacrificing herself. If that's not brave and heroic, I don't know what is. Though not the main character in Aladdin, Princess Jasmine commands attention whenever she's on screen. From the outset, she challenges the expectations placed upon her. She refuses to be married off for political convenience and demands the freedom to choose her own future. When she declares, "I am not a prize to be won," she draws a line, not just with the men who try to possess her, but with the tradition that treats women as bargaining chips. Jasmine seeks honesty, not wealth. Authenticity, not status. Her strength lies in her clarity and her refusal to compromise on what she knows is right. Though not technically a princess, Mulan is considered to be part of the Disney princess genre. Mulan is the OG badass babe who was strong in every way. I don't think there was any debate on her being seen as passive or a victim. Which is why it is so interesting that they changed her story in the live-action remake. Spoiler alert for those who have not watched the live-action Mulan remake. But instead of being the awkward, gangly teen girl trying to fit in, she's already a badass, athletic, confident queen from the start. Love that for her, but it ruins the point of the whole story. In the original, Mulan was, like I said, an awkward, gangly teen girl just trying her best to fit in and please her family. When her elderly and injured father is summoned to go to war, Mulan makes a brave decision to go in her father's place. Think of how brave that is. Think of your average teen girl putting herself on the battlefield to save her father. A teen girl who has never had any military experience, but to save her father, she is willing to put herself in danger, possibly sacrifice her own life. What's so great about the Mulan tale is that even though she is not as physically strong as the men she trains with, she eventually becomes a great warrior. In the original animated film, we see her journey from awkward, gangly teen girl trying to keep up with the boys to using her wit and intelligence to be the first soldier to climb to the top of the pole and eventually become just as capable as any man on the battlefield. This story is inspiring because most young girls can relate to Mulan. Mulan shows us that you can be a regular girl, but with enough bravery, intelligence, and training, you can essentially become a badass. That's why the live-action remake made no sense and ruined the entire plot of the film, in my opinion. By Mulan already possessing this almost superhuman strength and fighting ability, they took away her accomplishment. It's not so inspiring to see a person who is already super strong and capable become a great warrior. She was already someone most girls could not relate to, because most girls are not born with super strength and fighting abilities. I think making the change dismisses the inner strength and bravery that Mulan originally portrayed. It's not as brave to put yourself in danger when you possess super abilities. It's not as relatable to young girls who can't see themselves in Mulan anymore because they are not born with super strength and confidence. Also, I think it kind of feels like a slap in the face to the original Mulan. It shows that she wasn't good enough or strong enough as she was. The only way for her to be more empowered or feminist was for her to not show any weakness at all. She had to be perfect from the start. What kind of message does that say to young girls? For decades, the Disney princess has evolved. Today's heroines are louder, bolder, more physically empowered, and that's a good thing. But it's also important not to erase what came before. Strength does not always come with a sword. Courage does not always roar. The original princesses were strong in a different way. They endured, they adapted, they chose hope over despair, love over fear, dignity over resentment. Why are Disney princess movies so important for young girls? From the first time Snow White appeared on screen in 1937, the Disney princess played an important role in many young women's lives. In a time period where women were often only the supporting character or just something pretty to look at, the Disney princess movies gave women a story of their own. It was one of the first time movies centered around a female character and made her essentially the hero or main star of the plot. The prince and the love story were almost always a subplot, but never the main theme. Disney princess movies feature characters that were respected and loved. Isn't that what we should all want for ourselves? I think teaching women to view themselves as princesses, as women who are worthy of love and respect, is empowering. To paint the Disney princesses as not being feminist enough or force them to be sword-wielding badass babes in the remakes diminishes the power they already had. It diminishes the type of strength and bravery most women possess. No, women are not physically as strong as men, but our strength and bravery lies in other aspects of our character. To compare our strength and bravery to men is unfair. Men may be more willing to put themselves in physical danger to defend their loved ones, but men are also much stronger and more capable of surviving a physical fight. Most women do not have the strength and brawn of a man to readily stand up in a physical encounter. Women show their strength in sacrificing their wants, needs, and even their own life and body for the people they love. Their strength lies in their ability to care for and nurture those they love. Their strength lies in their ability to withstand and endure physical pain and oppression. Women may not fight with our fists, but we still fight. I think to portray the Disney princesses as weak victims waiting to be saved by the prince is to diminish the strength and femininity. The Disney princesses didn't need to slay a dragon to save the day. By being themselves and staying true to their own feminine nature, they've inspired millions of young girls worldwide and continue to.